hundreds of clubs have been formed. The hood lifters, the Arabs, throttle jammers, shifters, chaparrals, knuckle busters, clutchers club, dusters, sidewinders, and others with equally fanciful names.
On June 12, 1962, a tragic event in the life of George Lucas almost changed the history of cinema. Just 3 days after his high school graduation, Lucas was at the crossroads of what he would do with the rest of his life. His father wanted him to come work for him in their stationery store. However, George Lucas had other dreams in mind.
Stock car racing has changed the American automobile almost beyond recognition in the past few years.
He wanted to be a race car driver. He spent a lot of his high school years racing in the underground California circuit at fairgrounds. Making movies was the furthest thing on his mind. As he would later tell Film Quarterly in 1974, "I really didn't pay much attention to movies. I would go to the theater looking for girls or to goof off." However, George Lucas's dream of becoming a race car driver was about to end. As he was heading home in his small barraquina after leaving the library with his classmate Frank Frietta, who was following behind Lucas in his Chevy Impala, Lucas sped down the street, heading to his California home. Frank started to pass. Lucas, not seeing the car about to pass him, turned to pull into his driveway of his home. Frank's Impala crashed into George Lucas's car, causing it to flip several times before hitting a tree. His friend, Frank, in a much bigger car, hardly had any damage and walked away with barely a scratch. However, for Lucas, the crash was much worse. During the rollover, Lucas's seatbelt snapped, throwing him from the vehicle. Thankfully, a bystander who saw the wreck pulled Lucas clear of the wreckage and called for an ambulance. Soon paramedics arrived to find Lucas not breathing and having no heartbeat. He was rushed to the local hospital in critical condition. His lungs were crushed, and he hovered close to death for the next 2 weeks. It would take him several months to recover. While recovering, he had time to think about his dream of becoming a race car driver. "I spent some time in the hospital, and I realized it probably wouldn't be smart for me to race cars," he told Starlog magazine in 1981. He goes on to add that before the car accident, he knew the dangers of car racing and how close to the edge he was. But once you go over that edge, you realize what's on the other side, and it changes your outlook. The odds are against you. Stay in long enough, it will happen to you, George Lucas told Starlog. After being released from the hospital, Lucas had a new outlook on life and new dreams. He enrolled himself into junior college. From there, the rest is history. It makes one wonder how life would have been for pop culture, Star Wars fans, and Hollywood if Lucas passed away that day, or didn't even have the wreck at all. The world would be a much different place. As George Lucas went on not only to make one of the biggest pop culture films ever made with Star Wars, he also changed how movies were made with the founding of Industrial Light and Magic, and how movies were heard with THX, and so much more. If he wrecked earlier on his way home, things could have been different, as the bystander who pulled George from the wreckage would not have been there. Who was this hero that saved George Lucas after the wreck? His name is basically unknown. However, his grandson, Ricky Phillips, would go on to play bass for Bad English and later with Styx. And Ricky's stepsister would come to play her own part in the history of Star Wars.
The perfect person to take over the company was Kathy. It's just such a perfect fit.
As she would become president of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy. This just goes to show how much a tragic event in your life can actually turn out for the better.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.